Hey, it's been a long time, hasn't it? Sorry I've been away for so long. I've had crazy family business going on and just a ton of stuff. But I won't lie to you, one of the things that has been occupying my little bit of free time that I have, I've been building my Touch Animator app I've shown you before, but I have been playing a lot of Diablo 3, and it's not the only reason why I haven't done tutorials, but I've been doing a lot of Diablo 3. And so, in honor of that, since I have to get back into the tutorial making business, here is the Archangel Tyreal in his Archangel form. I don't want to spoil too much for the game, but basically, this is his original form. And so, I'm going to show you in this tutorial, going to go kind of touch on different aspects of how I made this character's wings, the glowing wings that you see here, and some of the post-processing that went on. Okay, so we're going to cover up a few things. I'm going to show you basically how I got the kind of like a displacement here on the wings, which is actually animated. You can't see it, of course, in the still image. How I did the glowing texture, and finally how I created, as you can see here, around the sides, edges of the wings, and you can see this kind of glow effect, this halo effect going on here. And you can also see off of the these really highly speckled areas, you can see these kind of streaks coming off, which give it, an angelic character like this would have something like that going on. So I'll show you a couple aspects, a little bit of modeling, a little bit of texturing, and finally some post-processing. So since I've been away for so long, this will be kind of like a 3-in-1 tutorial. Maybe quite long, so hopefully I won't have any trouble uploading it. Okay, so let's go ahead and... I'm still recording? Alright. Okay, so let's go ahead and at first, let me just scrub through the time slider here, and you can see, if you look closely at the wings, you can see that they actually kind of like shimmer and move. Of course, I have the subsurface set down to 0 in the view so that it will play smoothly. In case you don't know, let's just take a look at the modifier stack on this character here. Again, the wrench icon is all the modifiers. And these are things that modify how a character moves or how it is deformed. You can see at the top of the stack we have our armature, which of course here's the bones and stuff that move the character around. And then underneath that is our subsurface, which of course is the thing that smooths out the character model and makes it nice and renderable. You can see that in the view I have it set to 0. That is so that I get a nice smooth playback when I'm zooming the view around. If you set it up higher, you'll see more like what the character is actually going to look like when it's rendered, but there's really no reason, unless you specifically want to see how something exactly is going to line up with something, there's really no reason in the viewport to set the view anything other than 0, because you'll just slow your display down to a crawl. And the render view, iteration of subsurface set to 3, which is usually fine for most things. The thing that actually creates the actual movement on the wings is the displace modifier. So if you add modifier and you find displace right here, that's what you'll find. Okay, so before I go into that, let's go ahead and select the right-click on the guy and select him. We'll go to tab mode. And if I go over to my object data tab, you can see all these vertices. I've hidden everything else in the character, and I just went ahead, I selected just all of the exterior parts of the wing, of all the wings. You can see the kind of center parts I didn't want to move, because I want them to be attached to the base. I don't want them kind of shaking and stuff while they're inside of his body. So I want the exterior parts of the character to be affected by the displacement modifier. So what I did was, in the modeling mode here, or in edit mode, I just selected all of these vertices on the outside of the wings, and then I went over here under vertex groups. I just clicked the plus button here, and then I just named this group of vertices, I named that wings, okay? So now we'll just hit tab to go back into the object mode. If we go back in here to our modifiers, you'll see that in the displace modifier, under vertex group, I just selected wings. And so that means that this displacement is only going to affect those vertices called wings, okay, from that vertex group. And then it's very simply a matter of just going ahead and changing these defaults here, like what do you want the mid-level to be, what do you want the strength to be. As you can see here, you can get really crazy with it. and to the point where it just completely blows the character out. And you could actually, if you go ahead and hover over this and hit the I key, you would go ahead, let's see, I, and you'll see that if you do that with any of these, and you go to another frame and change these values, I again, all right, you'll set keyframes for these. So you can animate this. I don't know if you knew that before, but basically then we'll go to this frame and go like this. Move it down a little bit. Okay. So now you can see the effect. Maybe if he's angry or something, his wings would flare out more at one point in the animation or something. Okay. In this animation, I just left things the way they were, but as you can see, you could probably do that. This is just I'm doing this very much exaggerating this effect because I wanted to just illustrate the point here. You would never really want to do it that much, but even something like a bit more subtle like that, you could add maybe a little bit of turbulence to that. You could every so often set a little keyframe for the strength here, and that would give it even more randomness. Okay? Alright, so that is the modeling section of that. So basically, after I model the character, I just created a vertex group for the wings, add the displacement modifier, selected the wings vertex group in my list there, and then the rest of it is just, there's really not much you have to do with that, okay? I forgot to tell you that the texture, I loaded textures into this from this tab here, or the textures tab, and then when you're in the modifier, after you've loaded textures in there, just by clicking on, adding new textures and whatnot, when you go into your modify tab, you have a list of all the different textures, okay? So I created this texture called wing displacement, or wing disp, and then I just selected that as the texture that we want to use as the actual values of the displacement, all right? Okay, so that's how we created the actual kind of physical wing displacement. So now let's look at how the material for the wings, the color of the wings was achieved. So we'll go to the Material tab, and you can see here's the material I created for the wings, called it Glow Wings. And let's just kind of briefly go through some of these options here. You see under Diffuse we've got Lambert, the intensity is a little bit high. You can just kind of look at these, just kind of get an overview. I guess the only thing that's different from normal here is a fairly high specularity. You can see here the emit is set to 0. Okay, you would think that something like this would emit light, but I'm going to get to that in a second why I set the emit to 0. The translucency is up pretty up over the default value because we want these things to kind of like, translucency is sort of like a waxy kind of look, so that if you have light shining from behind an object, for example, if you put your hand up to a lamp or something, you'll be able to kind of see the light coming through your hand, even though your hand's a solid object. The light can permeate it. I turn on transparency, Z transparency, and I set the values like this. Okay, that's going to go. The reason why I did that is because we want transparency on certain parts of the object, and that's going to be controlled by the textures that we're going to load here in just a second. All right, so the rest of this is pretty self-explanatory. But the real kind of look of the wings comes when we go to the Textures tab. So under the Textures tab, you can see I imported 2 textures. All right. Actually, this first texture is Voronoi. So this is actually one that comes, it's a mathematical texture you can see here that is bundled inside of Blender. You don't have to create like an image map, separate image map. And you see it has a kind of like a cell organic kind of shape pattern to it. All right. And so under the mapping, I just selected generated. So basically, I didn't UV map it or anything. I just have it, the default kind of UV coordinates that are generated kind of automatically for the object. I just use that. And you can see that what's really important about this aspect of it is the influence. So I'm influencing the color, the ambient, the emission, and the normal. So basically this texture here is going to slightly kind of bump map or ripple the object there to give it even more kind of more of an organic feel. I set the normal to -1 so that it's kind of indented. The emission is going to create the actual light emission from this. So it's very important if you're having some object that glows, you either have to set the emission here under shading, or you have to do it with textures. All right. If you do it under shading by setting the emit value up, the problem is going to be that the entire material is going to emit light. So if it's a light bulb, that would be great. But if it's anything else where you want sort of like a random pattern, you can see here that the entire thing is not completely shaded like that. There are dark areas in there. All right, so that's why you probably want to use textures in order to set the emission. Okay, and we're still going here. Okay, all right, and the next texture is actually painted. All right, I just went into Photoshop and I painted kind of a very white, kind of stippled, kind of striated pattern, almost like a rings of Jupiter type pattern here. That's just all white and transparency. It's a PNG with alpha channel on it. You can see here, Tyreal Wings Alpha. So it's just got some very white areas, a little bit of gradients in here, and there's a few dark kind of stipples in the middle there. And the edges are kind of transparent, so that it'll kind of bleed off the edge and whatnot. All right, now this one I did UV map because I wanted to kind of follow the contours of the wing. So I just went in and did the UV mapping. I think I've covered UV mapping pretty well in some other tutorials, so there's no need to really show that here. But basically just went in, UV mapped these, just pretty much put them right here and just did a planar UV mapping and just UV mapped just the wings like that. Okay, and the thing for this one is you can see that this one also affects the emission value, and the important thing here is that this one affects the alpha value, because you can see in the texture material ball that certain parts of it are completely transparent. I wanted that so that the wings, after looking at pictures of Tyreal online, you can see that the wings are not completely solid and glowing. They have kind of these kind of transparent striations throughout them. All right, so that's basically how I did achieve the actual material. Not very complex, very easy, simple thing once you know what to do. You can make a material like this within just a few seconds or a minute or so. Okay, the real magic from the extra kind of oomph, the bringing it to 11 sort of aspect of this comes from the post-processing. So after the image is rendered, Blender goes back in and it looks at all the pixels of the image, and then it does things for you, adds post-processing effects based on what you do in the node editor, and that is what gives it the extra kind of glow effect and the streaks and stuff like that. It looks really nice. So to achieve that effect, the first thing you have to do is go under your render panel. It looks like a camera. And then you go down here to your post-processing tab and ensure that compositing is selected. Sequencer, usually these are selected by default, all right? And let's see here, do I need under performance? Let's see, where is it at? Layers. Okay. The other thing you have to do is under the layers tab, you have to tell Blender, what types of layers you want it to render out or to have hooks into. This is very important because if you don't check these out, then later on when you're doing the compositing, the correct kind of plugs will not be available to you in the node editor, which will make sense to you in just a second. So I think by default you've got to combine Z and specular. So the only one I had to really deal with here that wasn't turned on normally is emit. You can do all sorts of wonderful things with these different render pass or render layers that you can and passes that you can check mark. All right, there's a ton of different effects that you can do. So I'll show you basically how powerful this can be in just a second. All right, so once you've done all of that, then go into your node editor right here. By default, you probably won't see anything. You'll have to check mark Use Nodes, and then you can see the different types of nodes that you can use here. All right. So you can, texture nodes, compositing nodes, and material shader nodes. So basically, you can create nodes for all sorts of different, things. Or you can create nodes for materials or textures. You can create textures using this workflow here, which is basically a workflow which, if you've done any kind of compositing in a lot of different compositing programs, this may look familiar to you. So let's go ahead and look at the beginning of this. So again, because I checkmarked these extra, the emit and all this kind of stuff, because I checkmarked those, when you go to render the thing, these little plugs are available to you. And then you can start dragging these out and creating and plug them into the different inputs. All right. And so the way you create an input, in case you haven't used the node editor before, is you just hit Shift A to add, and all your inputs will show up. You could, for example, add a texture. All right, and then textures will be available to you. You can select a texture, and then basically, in order to basically make this work, you would just take, for example, the image node, and you would drag it into here, for example, the scale, and then you would drag the output of this into something else, like over here. All right, I'm not going to do that because it's going to mess everything up. You could drag it, for example, into the size or something. So these things, these nodes can become very complex. X to delete that. All right. Let's take a look at basically how the what I did here. What I did was I took the emit value and I kind of dragged that out twice. I dragged it into this blur filter, this Gaussian blur filter. There's different types of blurs, and I dragged the emit value. So basically, anything that has an emission greater than 0 is going to be sent, those pixels are going to be sent into these filters, all right? And the nice thing is once you start, I think after you render something, I'm not sure if these will show up by default, you will see the actual effect on just those pixels. So you can see here exactly what we would expect, what we would want, which is the wings, just the emission part of the wings is getting blurred. And so I have one blur that's kind of like a very large kind of soft blur. You can see the size is 1. And then I did another one down here, which is, I checkmarked bokeh, which is a bit more of a tighter. You can see here it's not quite as fuzzy as the other one. So we have one that's kind of like, has kind of like an inner kind of glow to it, and the other one has like an outer glow, okay? And then what I did as well was I fed the value of this blur into this glare node, and you can see here what this does is it takes some of the brighter areas and it kind of creates like a streak effect out of them. You can see the type of thing that it's going to create. This creates simple star, streaks, ghosts, all this kind of stuff. All right, and then you just play around these values till you get something you like. All right, then I just plug that into this. This is very important once you start doing the compositing. Once you break out these whatever channel you're manipulating, once you've done that and done your manipulation with it, usually what you need is find a way to take these different filters that you've applied to different areas of the image and mash them back together, and that's where the add node comes in. All right, so you just add an add node, and you see the effect is add, and I chose a factor of 0.5. Depending on what you want to do. It'll take both of these images, basically these kind of black and white images that were created from that emission value, and it's going to convert them into one final image, all right? And then that is going to go ahead and add together with this. What I did here was, at the bottom part of this may seem to get a little bit complex, but if you just follow step by step, you'll see what's going on. Again, we took the emit value, we just did the wings, these nodes here. This is all just, making the wings glow. Now at the bottom here, I'll just move it down so it's easier to see what's going on here, kind of separate these things. Okay. What I did here was, if you follow this kind of string to the specular channel, so basically this means that anything that is kind of shiny, very bright and shiny, is going to have this filter applied to it. So you follow that string over here to the image that's plugged into the glare node. So basically, only things that are over a certain threshold here, only pixels that are very, very bright, they're going to have this glare applied to it. And the reason why I don't apply the glare to the whole image, because every single pixel in the image would be sparkling and glaring, and they would look like the vampires in Twilight. It would be really ridiculous. So basically anything in Twilight is ridiculous, sorry to say. But I don't want these wings to be affected by that at this point, because I want them to just be blurred nice and soft with these blur filters. And so basically, this is what you do. You affect certain areas of the image separately. Then later on, you use add filters to mash them together. All right. So what I did was I took before we mash all the glare in with the glow effect that we've done on the wings, I went ahead and fed the glare into this mix node. All right, and I set, instead of setting it to add, I set to mix. So this will mix the pixels together. And so you see here, what I did was I took the unfiltered image and dragged that into the bottom of the mix node, and I took the filtered image and put that on top. And so that's going to make the filtered pixels kind of sit on top there and kind of influence the image. All right, and then we finally took that, and we finally are ready, and we went ahead and plugged the mix node that had the glare streaks and stuff and added to the specular. We plugged that up into an add node with the final product of all these different glow, Gaussian filters that were done to make the glow in the wings. Plug that into there, and basically, if you don't get what you like, you just plug these in. You'll just find out very quickly, which ones look good and whatnot. So you can have the image in the back. View properties. Let's see here. I don't remember how to use it. How to do it. I'll have to find that for you later. I don't want to do it right now because I have to render the whole thing again. But I think there is a way to show the image in the background, and I will look for that for you later. It's somewhere. It should be under view here somewhere. But I think what happens is once you've rendered the image out, when you have this window open, if you render the image out, it will show here in the background. All right. Okay. So then when you manipulate this stuff, you'll be able to see the effect of that on the image in real time. All right. So finally, you just go ahead and feed both these into the add node. And then the final step, this composite node should be created for you by default. You just drag this final image into the composite's final image, and you're good to go. So I guess we can go in an overview here. What we covered was basically first we covered how to create the. I created a little vertex group here for the wings. Added a displacement modifier. All right. And selected the wings as the vertex group for that. I selected a texture, which I had already imported before, and then if you want to, you can go ahead and play with the strength and even animate that if you wish. All right, we created a nice glow material, and we set everything like this. What we did was the only thing that's really changed from a normal material is we turn on the transparency. When you turn on the transparency, you got to check mark the Z transparency, or doesn't really do that much. Then under the kind of textures here, we created two textures. One was a mathematical texture inside of Blender. The other one was kind of like a painted texture we did in Photoshop. And we just set them to influence the various aspects of it, the emission, for example. We went to the render tab. We turned on the correct render passes that we want to manipulate in the node editor. We ensured under post-processing that compositing was checkmarked at least. Sequencer is for another time. That's a video sequencer. Under the node editor, we checkmarked use nodes. We checkmarked compositing. Then we fed these different channels. The emission went to its own set of filters here that were used to blur out the wings. We had a glare effect. We combine them together with an add filter. The specular section of the image was sent to a glare node, which was mixed with the original image and then added to the glow filters, and that final output was just slid right into the final image. Okay, so I hope that helps you out. Sorry it's been a while. Hoping to do some more tutorials and stuff like that. Kind of missed getting back to it, but just things are crazy. So hope that helps out, and talk to you later.